Well, hey folks, it's your old pal King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. It is Christmas Eve, and so I thought we'd all sit around the Christmas tree and bundle up by the fire, have some cocoa and cookies, and talk a little bit about the double apocalypse. Megaverse in Flames, the keystone book for the Minion War in the Palladium Books Rifts, and other Palladium titles. Um, it's very akin to the Blood War from Dungeons and Dragons in that you have two rival hells, one where you have your more classic brutal monstrous demons, and then another hell that's populated by your more corruptive, subtle, charismatic devils, as they call it instead of devils. Um, who've been going at it against each other for time immemorial, kind of just in the background, almost ignored until recent events where a force from Hades managed to invade the topmost level of Devil, and it started like a new round of fighting that has spilled out across dimensions. Now, in the Rifts version, it's like darker, more brutal than what you get out of the D&D version. D&D's is kind of more like your Saturday morning cartoon variant of the idea. Also, because Rifts does have the whole thing of having these different game settings that share the pretty much identical rule system or extremely compatible variants of the same rule system. It provided them an opportunity to actually show off the multiversal aspect of this conflict by originally leading up to it by having like a book for Heroes Unlimited, which I've never read. Then there's been ongoing stuff in the Palladium fantasy setting. In the land of the damned, where basically the demons and devils have kind of just been in a stalemate this whole time anyway. And there's also Dimensional Outbreak for Phase World, the probably the most supported of the various Rifts subdimensions from that series of Dimension books. And then it finally gets to Rifts itself. Now, the book is written very much in this is going to be a big game-changing thing that's going to forever alter Rifts, and it's just going to be just chaos and war, and Earth might be doomed. Except I've spent a long time putting a lot of thought and looking at the various numbers and who's where and what, of trying to map out exactly how the Minion War will unfold on Rifts Earth. And I'm not really sure if it really is all that much of a game changer. It does remix a little bit of the power balance in both, especially primarily North America and in Europe, but only slightly really. And just the preponderance of so many different super powerful beings, super powerful alien races, super powerful alien civilizations, vampires, Splugorth, the fact that all of China is locked off in its own little subdimension of hell ruled by the Yama Kings, and also the fact that humanity on this planet has had to hold on to and maintain and further develop weapons technology to a point that they're able to kill off godlike beings just as a matter of survival, just to get to through the 200-year period of Dark Ages following the initial cataclysm. And the fact that multiple demon armies invaded Earth during the Chaos years following the Cataclysm, and somehow even then didn't manage to, gain control of the entire planet. Demon armies that come from this book. It very much says that when the demon and devil armies first tried to rift to Earth, several of their forces, appeared earlier in the timeline than when they were planning to get here. 109 is basically just when the rest of the forces finally catch up. And just looking at where the hell pits are, what kind of forces the demons have specifically in terms of the actual numbers and creatures that are employed in the various armies, and what sort of things are around them, and also just the fact that the demon and devils, it's going to take them a while to really even realize that this version of Earth is actually a threat to them. They're primarily going to be focused on each other at first. It's not like they're going to be out there just attacking coalition and non-allied independent kingdoms all the time, just for the sake of conquering them. That's not what their goal is. Their goal is to defeat the other army of hell so that they can rule the earth. So, I mean, just considering all that, I don't think it's really that much of a threat to the planet. I still feel like the Zytikics are probably still your number one threat to the long-term survival of life on Rift's Earth. There's the two major hell pits from both sides that are likely to be able to maintain and retain activity is probably like Calgary and Cuba. They're most isolated, furthest removed from, you know, like the center of coalition power, and, you know, like they're already pretty much active, and so they got a, you know, a amount of resource supply that the other hell pits don't really have. The demons are, you know, more brutal. They're probably more geared for an actual, like, classically styled war where, you know, you have demonic troops with weapons doing tactical things. The hell pits, though, that operate that way are going to be like the first to draw attention to themselves and be backtracked to. The hell pit and the tundra, which I want to say is Hell Lord Fury. You know, it'll have a lot of like good successes early on running strikes while it still remains winter after all this begins. But as soon as, you know, like the summer season starts to thaw that far up north, they're right across the Hudson Bay from Free Quebec. Free Quebec is not going to be facing a whole lot of other direct threats. I mean, so I guess you just float an army of glitter boys over the water, boom, boom, boom. No more tundra hell pit. The hell pit in Dinosaur Swamp, I mean, beyond the fact that it's surrounded by the Sumerian nations, you got Camp Cherokee right there. You have the True Atlantean Underground operating out of Atlanta just to the south, surrounded by like a bunch of powerful just natural beasts, you know, dinosaurs and dinosaur-like aliens that, you know, aren't going to serve them or anything. That, you know, the demons and devils running around in their area are just going to be as much easy pickings as anything else. The presence of the demon hell pit there is going to attract the Roon, and through them the Atlanteans. It's also like they're positioned in such a place where they can also even like take a little punishment from the Coalition and Free Quebec navies. So I feel like the dinosaur hell pit will probably be like maybe the next or third to fall. The hell pit in New Mexico might last a little longer because at first it'll kind of appear a bit more subtly. It's a less militant operation going on there. They're mostly focused just on getting the hell pit built fast enough because of all the backstory going on with their hell lord, who's being like possessed and turned into the avatar of the death demon from Rifts, Africa. But you know, they're right on the Coalition's back doorstep because of Lone Star being right there, and Coalition needs Lone Star really badly right now, not only because dog boys are incredibly useful for fighting the supernatural, but also because their manufacturing centers are a bit burned out by the Tolkien War, which had just ended before the Minion War kind of comes to Earth. You know, like their manufacturing centers in Chi-Town and Ironheart aren't going to be as up to snuff, and so they're going to have to rely on Lone Star also just for manufacturing weapons and power armor and all that other kind of stuff. So Texas is very important to them, and so there's going to be like, you know, certainly a good amount of resources dumped into keeping Lone Star operational. You also have Arsno, you have the vampire army of Fort Tombstone, you got Apaches, you got Comanches. You have just your regular assortment of Wild West people. You got the Lurensal, or how the hell you pronounce their names, the Sky Knights. Black Market, Bandito Arms isn't going to want the New Mexico hell pit there. That's right in the middle of their only easy path through. The Colorado Baronies are potentially under threat. There's a lot of things all gathered around and waiting to just blow the shit out of the New Mexico hell pit. So I don't really think that one's really going to be much of a trouble. The Magic Zone's hell pit, you know, it's not even determined where it's going to be yet. It's probably never going to be able to get off the ground. The Magic Zone's going to be, you know, possibly long-term one of the most chaotic areas, and probably one of the ones that's going to end up seeing the most destruction, as, you know, demons and devils constantly feint and try to, you know, divert attacks to the wrong targets. It's going to, you know, catch up a lot of the Federation of Magic cities. Dwemer's likely to get screwed over by it. Mage Star, Spire, and then, of course, Dunscan itself and the Kingdom of Dunscan and Alistair Dunscan. He's got, you know, both demons and devils already in his kingdom and in his advisory board, so he's going to be having to, like, walk some narrow line to keep both sides happy with each other and keep them from just turning his country into a battlefield between the two of them. I would say he might be a likely candidate for local Earthlings who might get promoted to the rank of Hell Lord after a few Hell Lords are taken out when they lose their pits, because both sides have this fascination with having 7 of everything. Hell Lord Roon, who is supposed to be the demon lord who's operating her forces there, she's on the list of the demon armies and demon commanders that are likely to actually last, because they're the ones that are less focused on building a hell pit and creating a big, name for themselves by, destroying locations. She's focused on embedding her forces and the guys as mercenary companies. And so even though they don't really like mention it in this book, it seems logical that she would end up focusing her base of power out of Merktown, and so then that would slowly corrupt Merktown. And if and when the Coalition ever gets wind of that, that might be the end of Merktown as well. Numerous Devil forces are probably going to jump into the Magic Zone when they first rift into North America. They don't have as many established bases. They basically just have Cuba. Because of that, the Devil Navy is going to be like their strong suit. The one thing they're going to be relatively unchallenged on, at least in terms of from demon forces. They'll have relatively free reign to run up and down the Atlantic for a little while until the American New Navy, the Coalition Navy, the Free Quebec Navy, the NGR Navy, Lemurians who've come to help out in Central America, Colombian Navy, and also I don't really see how the Lord of the Deep is going to be terribly hip to allowing either Hades or Divil to take over the entire planet. So, it's. And also you got the Atlanteans, obviously, and massive amounts of Kydians, Ikitani ships and power armor. Long term, is the Devil Navy really gonna be a problem? An unstoppable force? No, they're once their routes and tactics are kind of whittled out, they'll probably have a lot of their ships sank. And so even though they have multiple open hell pits on Cuba and they can reinforce the shit out of Cuba, eventually, they're just going to kind of be contained there. Calgary, because of its isolation and the fact that it's already kind of built up as a kingdom of monsters before it becomes a hell pit, will probably hold on a bit longer. But even then, you got the Cyber Horsemen of Ixion, close proximity of the Cyber Knight headquarters, several Native American tribal reservations around the area, large tribes of Simvan and Psy Stalkers. And the Coalition from Minnesota already being aware that Calgary is a problem anyway. Also possibly with maybe some help in recon from Tundra Rangers and stuff like that. I don't see Calgary necessarily being taken out easily. Because of all of its ley lines, they're not just going to want to nuke it and wipe it off the planet, because that could just make the hell pit worse. But I can see that with surgical strikes and recon, they can basically keep the hell pits from ever getting fully operational. They can basically kind of keep Calgary besieged, and if they can trick any Devil armies to jump into Calgary to directly engage their demonic rivals, they can then contain both sides in there, and they'll be doing half the work for the people trying to maintain the siege, because the demons of Devils will keep picking at each other and keeping each other off balance and unable to get their hell pits up and operational and keep getting reinforcements in. The other North American demon army that will probably last is that of Hell Lord Siren, because like Hell Lord Roon, she's not trying to establish a hell pit and a physical field army. Her whole bag is to create a spy network. Her conflicts are mostly going to be whether or not to take over the Pecos Empire or try to set the Pecos Empire against itself, and likely to come into conflicts with vampires of North Mexico and El Oculta and Bandito Arms, because they're both the two black market area groups in the area. I can also see her potentially coming up into conflict with the vampires of Fort Tombstone, because they're also kind of a subtle subterfuge espionage kind of group in terms of how they operate. They're not an open field army. It's all special forces kind of thing. The temperaments of the Devils just they're not geared well for maintaining an actual field force of any kind. The devils are not going to operate quite as openly and brazenly as demons if you're trying to stay true to like how these things are designed to operate. They probably only have two viable ground forces out there. There's the Tolkien Avengers, which I can't remember the name of that overlord, but he basically has just kind of embedded himself and his forces into this motley crew of Tolkien survivors who are, still anti-coalition and want to win their home back. And so because of that, they're able to go around, a good chunk of the new West Frontier, do damage, get into fights, and people don't even realize that they're a devil army because, it's just Tolkien renegades still trying to cause a ruckus. There's also Queen Marauder in Europe. Because her forces mostly comprised of harpies, it's actually one of the most viable combat forces that the devils have, period. But it's probably to be basically just decimated when she tries to attack the gargoyles in Central Europe. Because even though the gargoyles are in a really bad position compared to where they were when they first started their conflict with the New German Republic, they still greatly outnumber both Queen Marauder's forces and the other hell pit that's in France from Helllord Heartripper. Both of which are going to want to focus on capturing and turning these gargoyles into their own forces. The gargoyles, because of Europe, or because of their history, they're not going to be hip to either of those two. And as long as, I don't really see it being that really practical or realistic that you're going to have an actual open armistice or truce between the Gargoyle Empire and the New German Republic. But I can't see the New German Republic operating somewhat like the coalition, in which it's like, maybe a little bit of fire support from a distance, and we just won't, come in behind and kill these guys if they're going to be fighting our battle for us. The gargoyles will be able to, on their own, take up a good chunk of the brunt of the conflict, and leaving the Sovietsky and Tarnow and Camelot in England and the New German Republic kind of, relatively free to come up afterwards and kind of just mop up. Your main question factors, the question marks that are there for the European theater of the Minion War is what exactly becomes of Sithena embedding her forces into the Broadkill Empire and partnering up with the Angel of Death. I just kind of feel like they're not really going to take over. They're just going to end up just being just part of the Broadkill Empire from that part. So the Broadkill Empire will be a little enhanced by having some devils. And so now instead of having two weird, crazy ladies in control of them, now they have three. I don't see that as that big of a deal. The bigger game-changing thing from that is that it's hinted at that apparently they're trying to make some sort of deal with the not ill DBs that live in the Baltic Sea to the north of Poland. And I just like how, Kaliningrad might come under threat, from a two-pronged attack from the sea and from the ground. But, the rest of the Sovietsky will be fine. Most of the warlords will probably storm in to help the Sovietsky, especially the warlords that live in the westernmost reaches of Russia. I feel like your other X factors, or what exactly are the Fomor and Balor up to in England? There's been very little updates on, what the ongoing plots of Rift's England have been in the, years since the England book came out and when the timeline is now. Have the Fomorians been dealt with, or are they still out there? They're another candidate or for the type of lesser demons who might try to sign themselves on to either side of the Minion War, maybe hey, allow me to be a replacement for that Overlord or Helllord you just lost kind of thing. But I mean, they're not a very high tech group. They're kind of stuck in Scotland, and one would assume that since Camelot is still around 8 years later, their attempts to invade and destroy northern England didn't get pulled off quite as well as they would have hoped, let's say. And then that also leaves the New Phoenix Empire and the north of Africa, controlled by Pharaoh Ramesset. In a similar fashion to Dunstan in North America, he also has a court that's divided between, forces who come from both Hades and Divil already, slightly on the edge of Hades. I feel he's more likely to make the practical decision to just go ahead and sign himself on to the Hades side of the fight. and possibly even declare himself a Hell Lord if one of the other Hell Lords falls. Don't even wait for permission, and just like, hey, look, I got the land and the resources. I got control of one of the more powerful ley line nexuses on the planet. Giza can be easily converted over to a Hell Pit kind of a thing. And also, you know, like, but really the balance there is not whether or not he, you know, might piss off the devils by taking Hades' side. It's whether or not, it's how much that will affect Pharaoh Ramesset relationship with Atlantis, because by this point, where something like that would happen, Atlantis is in the Splugorth. They're probably getting into that, like, you know, we're kind of just done with this. We've had enough playing nice guy. You know, like South America and Africa both might be interesting new fronts as the Minion War continues on. There's no details for them yet, aside from just like hinting that eventually Pharaoh Ramesset in Africa is going to have to make some sort of decision. But what kind of toeholds either sides might be able to get into sub-Saharan Africa or in northern central South America. I mean, South America has a lot of shit going for it too in terms of defense. Beyond, like, you got Incan gods, you got Nazca lines, you got the Megaversal Legion, aliens, multiple different kinds of aliens, mutant animals galore. I feel like South America is relatively safe. Possibly that dude Karkon with that army of demon ships. I could see him be another candidate to be a replacement Hell Lord, because he could bring in some sort of edge on giving the demons like nautical power, sea power, to start to try to, you know, balance out the devils. Because the devils have access to the sea, and until like the new Navy and Coalition Navy and Lord of the Deep and whoever else can get together and actually do something about their naval capabilities, they will have one of the easier times getting around the planet freely. You know, they can get out of the Atlantic, just go sail south around either South America or Africa, and then they can get into the Indian Ocean and into the Pacific. Unfortunately, the deeper they get into either of those territories, that puts them closer and closer to the center of power of the Lord of the Deep. And you know, they'll still, you know, have to face Lemurians and the Japanese potentially, and the new Navy still. So like it's not like there's any like safe zone on Earth where the devil Navy is really going to be able to like make a foothold and stronghold for itself and remain unmolested. And most of the other devil armies, like I said, like their intentions are to do stupid things like, we're going to jump into the magic zone and then march into Tolkien, or where the coalition like has like a huge amount of assets and resources there. Or we're going to jump into the magic zone and we're going to march straight into the Zytikix territory. You know, unlike General Holmes and the Coalition, an army of demons or devils trying to do something about the Zytikix is not going to go well for them, because unlike the Coalition, they haven't been studying these things. They're going to think they're just bugs and insignificant and be completely overwhelmed by just how deadly and single-minded the Zytikix can be. So that's like one or two demon armies or devil armies, you know, pretty much wiped out pretty quick. Like, I think it was Overlord Necroskull who wants to go to Atlantis and try to stage some sneak attacks from the inside of Atlantis on Splugorth territory. Yeah, so I guess that's the end of Overlord Necroskull. Yeah, I just, you know, it adds a few things, but it doesn't really, like, threaten the future Earth. It depends on like how subtly you choose to play the devils. I feel like of the two, they're the most likely to actually in the long term win if instead of instead of acting and operating as open field forces, that instead they're using politics and corruption to, you know, convince smaller nations to do their dirty work for them, and, you know, are trying to like a rule from the behind the scenes kind of vibe of what they're doing. The demons are just too blunt an instrument to pull that off in the long term, and because of their savagery, they're going to attract the lion's share of military attention to themselves. In the end, you know, I feel like either you can almost kind of just play this as that like this isn't really changing the setting at all. That, you know, it's really just more providing context as to what the demons and devils that have been on Rift's Earth this whole time think they're up to, and give some names to their NPCs and stuff. But like the idea that this is going to turn into some like Warhammer 40K battle to the finish to save the Earth, I just have trouble. Like you'd have to like really just purposely open the floodgates in your setting to allow the demons to have that kind of success. It certainly is going to damage the human nations of the Earth and the DB nations of the Earth, but they'll probably survive, maybe a little scarred, maybe a little forced to rely on each other more so than they used to, which is possibly a good development for the setting anyway. But like it's not the end of the world, haha. So I wouldn't take it too seriously. You could play it that like it's always been this way, and that the coalition's recent push to like galvanize everyone to fight against the Minion War, like maybe that's just propaganda. They're just like, oh, we fought a few demons that came out of a rift in Tolkien, big whoop, and now they're gonna make a big furor out of like they're coming for us all, we all got to join together and fight, kind of a thing. And like, yeah, like how legit is that really? If you're one of the kinds of people that resents the coalition suddenly being framed as good guys, well, there's an angle for you to still incorporate all this stuff, but put a little bit of a twist. What's a twist you can put on it to maybe like throw off some of your more knowledgeable players or something? Or just to rationalize it to yourself so you don't feel like you're doing something bad by allowing the coalition to have, victory in your mind or something like that. So like over time, like your main long-term battle zones are gonna like remain the Magic Zone, Calgary, the Caribbean islands. I mean, it's kind of, I guess, Central Europe in general, the Alps. It kind of depends on, or maybe Northern France. That might be a little slippery. Kaliningrad could be a bit of a battle scene. I mean, like, in the early months, especially before, like, Helllord Fury, like, is directly exposed to Free Quebec's Glitter Boys, they're going to have a couple months where they're going to be able to do some serious damage and jump in and out of, like, the Detroit-Windsor rifts. And that's where you could have your little thing where, like, New Laszlo is almost destroyed until Northern Gun sends a bunch of troops to help them out. So, yeah, I guess that's about it. There's a lot of different things you can do with the Minion War. So, check it out. And on that note, have the holiday of choice that you desire most, and stay waspinated.